Our big story for today and even the weekend, the ANC's Eastern Cape Provincial Conference kicks off today. This after multiple attempts to halt it. Treasurer General Paul Mashatile met with the provincial leadership yesterday and gave the green light to two contenders for leadership positions to participate in the conference. Joining me now is political analyst Lukhanyo Vangqa to unpack just this. Lukhanyo, good morning and thank you very much for your time. You know, I must say, out of all the analysis around the Eastern Cape Conference, I'm yet to hear any pundit stating confidently who they think might take it. Is it really too close to call at this point?
Mfundo, it's very close to call, especially with the level of confidence that we can see from both factions, that they're very much raring for this conference to go. And when that happens, it means that people are very confident in the numbers that they have. So that's why we have a very tough time to call this one, but the way I like to do it is to hit on the side of caution and say fortune usually favors the incumbent. So if I were to put my neck on the chopping block, I would say Oscar Mabuyane is going to get a second term.
Let's unpack that very theory or position of yours, that there's always that incumbency position. I know I've read somewhere some saying that sometimes, not all the time, they could dispense with patronage, or in fact here you could have an incumbent whose actual track record you can actually see. You can see that they've done something. So what would you attribute your position to?
It's usually has very little to do with the latter, because the ANC is a factional organization. So the way that things work is not because of merit or anything like that. It's what faction is able to wield what power and dispense what largesse and patronage to whom. So as an incumbent, what they are usually able to do is to stymie the ability of the other faction to organize and garner numbers on the ground. For an example, the Oscar Mabuyane faction, being in charge of the provincial executive, is able to tell the WB Khobosana region that you won't go to conference because we don't think you are ready to go to your regional conference. As a result of that, then you take about 20 to 30 votes away from the WB Khobosana region, which goes away from the other faction and bolsters your own numbers. So the ability to control party processes at the higher level gives you, as an incumbent, an added advantage over the other faction that contests you. So that's what we see with the Oscar Mabuyane faction in the Eastern Cape. The WB Khobosana region supports Madikizela on the other faction, and they were not able to go to their regional conference. So that's why fortune sometimes always favors the incumbent.
But Madikizela's faction is also quite confident right now, because if we look at the regions, we have 8. OR is said to be supporting Mabuyane, but it's being reported that 5 are supporting Madikizela. So when we just look at the regions there, you still think the numbers don't tally, at least in his favor, Madikizela?
It's the smaller regions that are supporting Madikizela. So you have Nelson Mandela Bay that has 101 delegates that are going, and you compare that with the much bigger regions that have come out in support of Oscar Mabuyane. So in terms of numerical numbers, per region, you can see that Madikizela has more numbers, but in terms of actual voting delegates, Oscar Mabuyane seems to be doing well on that particular side. So it also gets difficult in this one. It's not a clear cut as I'm making it out to be, but it's a very, very closely contested leadership provincial conference. And it's so close that most people, including myself, would not want to say which would win. But also looking at my theory that fortune favors the incumbent, that's why I would give it to Oscar Mabuyane, because I think he has more leg room to manipulate party processes to the benefit of his faction.
You know, I think not just pundits, but even the candidates' factions themselves, they're very quiet. So it really does indicate that clearly it is a very close race. But then at some point, if we talk about these factions, at some point there were reports that it's a 3-horse race between Oscar, Babalo and Mlibo. But then now it seems that Mlibo Qobushiana is somehow reported to be part of Madikizela's camp. Is that the case?
Yes, I would say so. Mlibo has always been, more sympathetic to the Madikizela camp, and also those that come with the Madikizela camp, your Andile Lungisas. If you remember, in 2017, Mlibo was deputy chair in their slate with Maswale and Andile Lungisa in East London as well in 2017. So he's always been within that faction. The three-way horse race of him being a dark horse is something that always kind of happens with ANC provincial conferences. When there are two dominant factions that are fighting, there's always someone that offers themselves as a third way. You know, Zweli Mkhize tried to do it in Nasrec. We saw Tokyo Sefale try to do it in Polokwane. So it's always there, this issue. But the third way never really gains traction within the ANC, and it's always swallowed up by one of the other dominant factions.
Mm-hmm. Now, insofar as these two candidates now are concerned, there's always this desire to link what happens in the province to the contest currently on a national stage. Is it always the case, Lukhanyo? Because in certain instances, many at this point tend to want to box the individuals that are contesting on the province and say it's either you are part of the Cyril Ramaphosa sympathizers or your RET. Is there never a possibility here where both candidates in the province can possibly even be CR in this instance, where it's only just their provincial ambitions here, where they want an opportunity to lead in the province, but really have not thought as far as the national contest?
Fundo, you're very sharp with that observation, because one of the things that we do as political observers is always try to look at things from a national perspective without forgetting the local dynamics that are also sometimes at play. For an example, both these men are Cyril Ramaphosa people. You know, both sides support Cyril Ramaphosa, and both sides have come out to say that they actually support Cyril Ramaphosa, Matigizela and Oscar Mabuyane. So what is happening is more on the local dynamics of the province of the Eastern Cape, and that's what this contestation is actually around, and not the issue of the national prism of politics. And that's where we're supposed to then look at this particular faction, contestation. But also what we also look at, Fundo, is the fact that these two were actually very close. They were on the same slate in 2017.
Yes.
They were, as thick as thieves, as the saying goes. And now they are contesting each other, which goes to the other theory that I have, the second one, that says the winning faction of any conference doesn't have to worry about the faction that they just vanquished. They always have to worry about an internal splinter group that, splinters from them and then contest them. And that's what we've seen with the ANC in the history of the ANC. You look at the people that deposed the Zuma faction in 2017. Those people were on the same slate as Zuma in 2012 and in 2007. So that's always the case, that a splinter of the winning faction is the one that comes back to contest and depose the faction that won a previous conference. So that's what we have here. Oscar and Babalo, very close, used to be very close to each other, and now contesting each other, but nationally they support the very same person, Cyril Ramaphosa.
I really think it was mischievous on some to now quickly look to box them into either CR or RET, whereas we forgot that these two were once on the same slate. And then on the state of readiness, though, we understood that the Eastern Cape's task team actually met with National to just discuss a few issues, and among them was in fact whether members of the party who currently have pending appeals can participate in the conference. It seems their eligibility was questioned. But one wonders if they do revert to the constitution, their own constitution, ever so often, because Rule 25.43 deals with just that if you have applied either for an appeal or a review, the sanction from before is suspended. So would there really need to be any clarity? They saw this even with Julius Malema and Ronald Lamula back when they were suspended from the party, that you continue if you've gone to take your matter up on appeal.
Fundo, it's very frustrating with the ANC in that they never apply their constitution in the manner that it's designed. For an example, what's happening here, that there's a matter of unclarity. It shouldn't be there. The constitution is very clear, as you've quoted that particular rule. But the same thing happened in eThekwini when they said that the regional executive task team that was there was not supposed to participate in the conference. However, the ANC constitution is very clear that they are allowed to participate. So this thing of pay-as-you-go, analysis of their own own constitution becomes very frustrating. So in the Eastern Cape, one would expect that they are allowed to participate pending finalization of their matters by the National Executive Committee. However, as we know, the ANC, some decision can be made on the ground, that makes that panders to the faction that seems to be dominant at that particular time. So it's not as clear-cut as the constitution of the ANC is, because the decision makers sometimes do depart from the ANC constitution. But if things were all equal, then those members should be allowed to participate.